Hey YouTube, welcome back. It's been a while. So this is going to be a super short video on something called Euphoric Recall. So I'm going to read a brief description from Google, and then I'm going to jump into an article to further explain it. Hopefully it will, when you hear the explanation, you'll recognize if you've possibly done that. Okay, so I know that in my younger years, after a terrible relationship, so like if you've had a breakup, right, a toxic relationship, and you have the breakup, you go through this thing of only remembering the good times, right? And you'll say to your friends, like, why do you only ever remember the good times? Like, oh my God, I just can't stop remembering the good things they did, blah, 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 right? So this is what euphoric recall is, according to Google. Euphoric recall is a state in which individuals remember the past with rose-colored glasses. This addictive thinking exaggerates a positive experience but fails to bring up the negative side, all of the good and none of the bad. So I'll hit the article I have, which I'll leave the link for you. Just checking it keeps its recording. Right. The article is from integrativelifecenter.com. The glory days, weren't they amazing? In this state, people recall specific memories with excessive fondness that can trigger a body's biochemical reaction. Negative aspects of the past vanish while the positives become embellished. Psychologist Terence Gorski wrote, "When we are in euphoric recall, we remember and exaggerate pleasurable memories of past chemical use episodes. Then we block or repress our bad memories of drug use or deny the pain associated with them." Okay, so this is an example. I'm going to jump on to try to find a bit about the relationship aspect, because we do this throughout different life experiences, like with drug addiction and recovery, and other addictions that we're trying to get rid of. What is that? Anhedonia, when the thrill is gone. Right, come on, where's the right, so another result of euphoric recall is positive expectancy. Here, the brain minimizes the negative impacts of engaging in undesirable behavior or substance use. A person might start to believe that addiction has changed their lives for the better. Distortions in thinking caused by anhedonia can make a person believe that good outcomes will follow undesired actions. Right, let me just find the relationship aspect. Euphoric recall in relationships. The recalling of past events or people in a positive light while forgetting or ignoring the negative aspects. Although it is referred to as a recall, it is actually an immediate reliving and re-experiencing of the positive aspects, the pleasure of the past event or person. When you're in the experience of euphoric recall, it makes you crave the good times you had with an abusive individual, for example. So you're sitting home alone and suddenly you remember all the happy times you had together with the ex-narcissist or the toxic individual. All the laughs, the gifts, the excitement and adoration. Maybe you should respond to that text. Maybe you could have done a few things differently in the relationship yourself. No one's perfect, right? Well, the truth is your mind is playing tricks on you because of something called euphoric recall. Euphoric recall is causing you to remember the happy times and minimize the bad. It's a defense mechanism, and in the case of narcissistic abuse, it's dangerous. Here's how to identify euphoric recall as it's happening and keep up the no contact for your own safety and well-being. And by the way, this article is from kimsaid.com for reference. Why has it gone back from... What's it doing this? It's gone back to addiction. But it said it was just going to discuss it in... Right, here it is. Right. So how does euphoric recall fit into narcissistic abuse recovery? Going no contact with a narcissist puts you in the same situation as someone going through addiction recovery. And I've explained that in so many videos and posts, community posts, about how there is a physiological addiction to the abuser. Okay, so when we're with an abusive partner, it is an addiction, right? It is as powerful as any addiction that has been wrote by doctors of psychology, psychiatry. That isn't just me making up that statement off the just on a whim. Okay, it is a physiological addiction. The abuser syncs your brain chemistry with that of the abuser. Okay, and they do that by the love bombing, and then the withholding, and then the love bombing, the positive reinforcement, then the negative and the criticisms, and they groom your brain chemistry into only being high or feeling good, right, when they're happy with you, and feeling low, depressed, anxious and harassed, stressed, etc., when they're angry, pissed off, annoyed with you, giving you the silent treatment, stonewalling you, and all the rest of it. Okay, so you need them to be happy with you or show you approval and praise before you feel okay, right? That affects the chemistry in your brain, right? Because when you see that someone that you love or that you believe you love, that really you're addicted to and attached to and infatuated with, right? Love has nothing to do with it. When they aren't happy with you, it affects your mood and your mental state, right? So you feel low naturally, which there's a change in your brain chemistry because now you're feeling low, right? Then a few days later, the toxic individual, abuser or narcissist shows happiness towards you, right? And it's like, oh my God, we're all right again, right? They've forgotten about that, you know, they're just going to drop it and stop getting at me over whatever they were getting at me for, okay? So you feel lifted, right? And then if they show you affection, they're hugging you or you're making out, right? They're breaking up to make up. You experience a real, literal high. Brain chemistry experiences a high. There's a rush of endorphins, the feel-good endorphins, the dopamine and the oxytocin, right? And they keep removing themselves and bringing themselves back. And it causes your brain to become reliant on that drug, right? And they are the pusher, right? They decide when you're going to feel high and when you're going to feel low. Now, not all narcissists, they're not conscious that that's what they're doing to you, most of them, right? They do this instinctively because it's a part of their personality disorder to be that way, all right? They're not a genuine, authentic person. It's a false self. So they're not intelligent to the point that they know what they're doing scientifically, or what they're doing inside your mind. The high ranking, mid-rangers to high ranking, the ones with a really high IQ with some self-awareness, will be conscious enough to study it and learn this and know that this is what they're doing, and then they'll be able to heighten the sadistic side of it and get more pleasure, more of a kick out of doing whatever it is they're doing, right? So this addiction to a person is like an addiction to a drug. Same way a drug makes you feel high when you're on it and you feel crap and low when you're coming down, and then the days in between, perhaps, right? You experience the same with a narcissist or an abuser. You are high on their say-so and you are low on their say-so, right? And this is how the isolating elements come into play when we're with an abuser. When they isolate us from family and friends, this causes this addiction to become even, you know, take more of a hold of us, because Whereas maybe when we see family, right, we get a lift, right? We get a lift of dopamine or oxytocin, okay? While they're isolating us, we don't even get the lift from seeing a friend because they've either turned us against them, turned them against us, there's been a falling out, whatever. The isolation aspect plays a part in controlling the brain chemistry. And of course, if you've got hobbies, right, this is why they say in a healthy relationship you should always have time to yourselves. You don't necessarily need to be together or on top of each other 24 hours a day. So if you had hobbies, for example, things that you enjoyed, something creative or going for a walk, something like that, right, or exercise, going to the gym, and your partner, he or she, they work on, again, the isolation aspect. So I know for myself, the times when I had like these meetings for these events, right, demonstrations or protests or different things that we were talking about doing at the time for Palestine, he would say, oh, do you have to go? Stay with me instead. Just, you know, come up with an excuse so you don't have to go. So it starts, some isolation starts off like that, where they're like, oh, just spend that extra time with me. I want to be with you. I don't want you to go. I want you to stay, right? So they're giving it all that. So slowly over a period of time. Do you have to go to the gym? Well, why do you have to go to the gym? You went yesterday, right? Or you went the other day. Spend it with me instead. So all the time they're working on isolating you. So when you would go to the gym, you get you experience a physiological high because you're exercising and you feel the endorphins. You get a rush of endorphins, okay? So they stop you doing that, right? So you're not getting a balance or a lift in your feel good hormones and endorphins because now you've stopped going to the gym, right? So you've stopped seeing your family and your friends. Now you've stopped going to the gym, right? You stop going for nice walks because maybe if the relationship's rocky and you're in that depressed, morbid, like you don't know what to do with yourself. I don't feel like doing anything. I'm staying in my pajamas all day and eating chocolate because there's been another argument, right? So you're not getting any feel good chemicals that you would have been getting if you were going for a walk because you're feeling crappy and you can't be bothered, or they'll decide, oh, spend that time with me. We'll go and do something, right? Or I'll come and pick you up, whatever it is. So this is how they make you reliant on them. And they are, in actual or in literal fact, your drug of choice. They become your drug and they are the pusher of this drug, okay? So that we have that connection. They are in charge of when we feel good and when we feel low, right? So coming away from that, when we break apart from that relationship, this is why no contact is so important, because it is an addiction. Speak to a doctor if you don't believe me. It is an addiction that you are breaking with an abuser, okay? You have become physiologically, not just psychologically, mentally and emotionally, and possibly financially and physically dependent upon them. You are also physiologically dependent on them for feeling good, just for having that normal, what you would normally wake up with, right? After you've had your coffee and you've had a shower and you're ready to start your day, that motivation, that vibe, that energy, right? They take that away and they become, with their moods and how they're treating you, in control of that, right? It's sick, absolutely sick. And this is why no contact is so important. And this is where euphoric recall plays further tricks on your mind, right? To try and have you believe or think about all these good times. And yes, it was good. And maybe it was me, right? No, it wasn't you. It wasn't you at all. So going no contact with a narcissist puts you in the same situation as someone going through addiction recovery. Narcissists manipulate you into a love addiction. In the beginning, during the love bombing phase, the narcissist gives you a high. You feel on top of the world. They shower you with affection, gifts, and promises. You believe this is the greatest relationship in the world and you have met your missing puzzle piece. Okay, no, it doesn't say that. That's just me adding that and being cheesy. Yeah, well, you believe that nothing else could compare. Before you know it, the love bombing has disappeared and it's replaced with insults, manipulation, and gaslighting. You feel like a shell of who you once were, just like an addict at rock bottom. When the narcissist feels like you might be getting fed up and slipping away from them, they'll dole out small hits of love bombing, which kick off the dopamine rush. Okay, so you get a bit of praise and adoration, and because you are so low most of the time in this toxic and abusive relationship, that slight tiny hit of dopamine wakes you up and you're like, I'm alive again. All right, I feel good again. I feel good. You're feeling good again because they're manipulating you. So they'll dole out small hits of love bombing again to keep you hooked and to remain hopeful. All right, they'll promise to change with no intention of changing, and before you know it, the abuse has returned with a vengeance. So how does euphoric recall happen? People suffering from the disease of addiction understand that recovery isn't linear. Chronic relapsers are well aware of a phenomenon called pink cloud syndrome. Pink cloud syndrome happens a few weeks or months after getting clean. After breaking their dependence on a substance, their brain chemistry starts shifting back to baseline, producing its own serotonin, dopamine, and GABA again. In the pink cloud, they're so ecstatic to be clean and living a good life. The world looks bright and they feel like a kid again, rebuilding their identity and experiencing everything they couldn't do during active addiction. But the pink cloud eventually wears off and reality sets in. Their daily routine gets boring and all the problems they faced before or during addiction are still there. Suddenly, picking up a hit or drink doesn't seem like such a bad idea to break the monotony. The world sucks. How can anyone go through it 100% sober? That's euphoric recall kicking in. They remember all the reasons they started using or drinking in the first place. They remember how good it felt to get drunk, buzzed, or high. When you leave a relationship with a narcissist, you'll also go through a pink cloud phase. You'll be thrilled to have your freedom back and start rebuilding your identity. Then the reality of boring old daily life hits you. You feel lonely. Suddenly, the love bombing sounds pretty darn exciting. Just like someone in addiction recovery, people going through narcissistic abuse recovery must prepare themselves for the pink cloud to wear off and euphoric recall to set in. How to avoid succumbing to euphoric recall? You can't avoid the euphoric stage from hitting you, but you can take a few steps to avoid breaking no contact. Play the tape. People going through addiction recovery are told to play the tape when they get the cravings. Imagine you had a time-lapse video of your entire relationship with the narcissist. If you were to watch such a tape, you would see a clear cause and effect pattern. You would see that giving in to the euphoria just for a little love bombing always leads back to the cycle of narcissistic abuse. Make a list of the relationship's abuse. When people go through addiction recovery programs, they're encouraged to make a list of their shortcomings and all the ways they've harmed people during their addiction. It's a part of learning about your resentments and about why you use or drink so that you can move past and make amends. After you go no contact with the narcissist, the first thing you should do is make a list of all the ways the narcissist harmed you. Get specific if you have to. How many nights and weekends did you spend fighting or alone? How many times did they promise to change, and how many times did they insult and degrade you? It's also a good idea to think of anyone in your own life who may have suffered as a result of your narcissistic abuse, especially children. This might include children, parents, siblings, and good friends. Go back to the lists every time you feel compelled to break no contact. Don't repress the urge of the euphoric recall. Acknowledge it for what it is. because ignoring your urge to break no contact will just force it to reappear later, perhaps when you're even in a more vulnerable mental state. Look at the urge objectively. You can't always control cravings or thoughts, but you can control how you react and manage them. Do you act upon every thought that comes in your head? No. Treat this urge to break no contact the same way. There's always support groups. There's some fantastic groups on Facebook. If they're of any interest to you, I can leave some other links below for support if you are experiencing this or recently have done. That's the end of the article. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Share your thoughts below if you experienced it or you've gone through that and maybe what happened. I know a few times I broke no contact in the early days. There is no shame in admitting that. I'm certainly not ashamed to admit it. I didn't realize either because this was like way over 10 years ago, so I didn't even realize that narcissistic abuse, a narcissist, or narcissistic behavior was ever even a thing. I thought a narcissist was just someone that was vain, or the Greek god. That's all I knew of narcissism back then. So okay, I'll wrap this up. I hope everybody's keeping well. Share your thoughts below, and until next time, bye for now.